Millionaire shortbreads are a classic for a reason. We've got that gorgeous buttery biscuit base, followed by the ooey gooey caramel layer and a thick layer of decadent chocolate to finish. So on that note, today I'm going to show you how to make them. So we make a Millionaire shortbread in 3 stages, starting off with our shortbread layer. As you can see in front of me, we've got all of our shortbread base ingredients here, starting off with caster sugar, plain flour, some vanilla extract, which is optional, but I like to give it a little bit of flavor, and butter or margarine. And either will work, but butter is going to give you more of that crumbly biscuit base that we're after. What we're going to do first is take a large mixing bowl and add that onto our table. Really simply, we're just going to pour in our caster sugar, followed by our butter or margarine, and about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Like I said, I just like to add this to give the shortbread base a little bit more flavor. Sometimes people can say that shortbread can be a bit floury tasting, so adding a little bit of vanilla is my sort of secret hack to counteract that. Using either an electric hand mixer or a stand mixer, we're just going to mix those together until light and creamy, and just until they're fully incorporated. With our butter for the base, we'd like it to still be cool from the fridge. We don't want it to be too hot and runny, otherwise we won't get a firm shortbread when actually forming our dough. And if you are using a stand mixer to do this, then use the paddle attachment, but if you're using a hand mixer, then these whisk attachments will work absolutely fine. Now that our sugar and butter are mixed together, we're literally just going to pour in our plain flour, and then if you're using a stand mixer, continue using that, but if you're using a hand mixer, we're going to switch over to either a spatula or our hands to just bring the dough together until we get a lovely shortbread mixture. It's going to all go into one entity and form a nice dough ball. If you are using your hands, obviously just make sure they're clean before doing this, and just mix everything together, sort of like pushing it between your fingers until you create that shortbread dough. It will come together slowly. You might be thinking it's not coming together, but don't give up, and eventually it will slowly come together. As you can see here, we're going to be left with our delicious shortbread dough, and what we're going to do with this is add it into a square 9 by 9 inch baking tin. Before we actually add it into the tin, we're going to grease this with some butter or margarine, and then add in our baking paper to line it. If we didn't do this, the shortbread would actually get stuck to the tin, and we wouldn't be able to get those lovely slices when we slice them up later. When you're lining your baking tray for a Millionaire shortbread, you want to make sure the baking paper goes all the way to the top of the sides of the tin. Otherwise, when we actually go to take the bake out of the tin, it's just going to get really stuck and sticky. So making sure it's all the way to the top will prevent that and give you those lovely slices as well. Once we've lined our tray as so, we're going to take our ball of shortbread and add it into the tray, and then either with your hands or a spoon, we're just going to press that down nice and flat until the whole thing is the same shape and size. We want to make sure we make it as flat as possible so that when we add our caramel, we get really nice symmetrical layers, pushing it all the way to the edges on each side. Once we've got our shortbread dough into the tin, we're going to add it into a preheated oven at 170°C for a fan oven, and that's also 190 degrees for a conventional oven. We're going to bake it for around 20 minutes until it's a light golden brown color at the edges. You'll know it's done when, if you press the top, it comes back a little bit firm and not completely soft. And if it's not looking completely done at 20 minutes, just add it in for an additional 5 minutes at a time. So while that cools down, we're going to move on to making our caramel layer, which is my favorite bit. So again, I've got all of our ingredients set up in front of me, starting off with our condensed milk. We've got 1 can of this. We've got some sea salt, which is optional, but I'll explain more about that later. Some caster sugar, unsalted butter, and some golden syrup. We need to start with a non-stick saucepan. You want to make sure it's not too small, so I've got a sort of medium-sized one here. And then the really good thing about making this caramel, which is also referred to as Dulce de Leche, which is a really thick caramel that sets really nicely, is you basically just add all the ingredients into your saucepan. We're going to start off in no particular order with our butter, then we've got 1 tablespoon of caster sugar, followed by our condensed milk and our golden syrup. Once all the ingredients are in the saucepan, we're going to put our hob onto a low heat and just gently let all the ingredients melt together, stirring consistently, making sure we get all the sugar from around the edge so that it doesn't stick and burn. My personal best trick for making sure we don't get burnt caramel specks in our caramel is just by constantly using a spatula to just scrape down the side so that no sugar is left at the edges. Just going to keep stirring until all the ingredients have completely melted. Then once they have melted and the sugar is completely dissolved, you'll know that is done when you can't see any more sugar specks throughout. It's just like one smooth liquid. We're going to turn our hob temperature up to about low to medium until it starts simmering. And again, do not stop stirring the entire time, because as soon as you stop, the bottom of the saucepan can catch, and that's what can cause like darker specks in our caramel. And we want our caramel to be one gorgeous color today. And if it's not changing color, you can turn your hob up a tiny bit more to a sort of medium temperature. You'll notice as it keeps bubbling away and you're stirring, it's going to sort of darken in color. And this is the really important part to keep in mind when making caramel. How far along long do you cook it? Because you don't want it to be too dark and have a burnt taste, but then also you don't want it to be too white as it won't develop those lovely caramel flavors. You want to try and get it to a medium light golden brown color. Once you get it to that temperature, just turn it off and remove it from your hob just so that it doesn't keep cooking. If you would like to add a little sprinkling of sea salt to make it salted caramel, you can absolutely do that, just about less than half a teaspoon, and just stir that in. Once we have our lovely caramel, we're going to pour it over our cooled shortbread base, making sure we get all of it out of the saucepan using our spatula, and then we're just going to smooth that all the way around the tin, making sure it reaches the edges and we have a lovely nice flat surface. So then at this point, we're going to have something that looks like this. We don't want to add our chocolate onto this bit right now because as the caramel is still really runny, if we were to add our melted chocolate, they're all going to combine into like one like liquidy mess and we won't get those lovely cross sections that we're after today. I'm just going to pop this into my freezer to firm up. You'll know it's ready to move on to the next step when if you poke the caramel, it's fairly firm and your finger doesn't sink into it. Our caramel layer is now set. We're now going to make our chocolate topping, which is going to consist of 300 grams of milk chocolate and 50 grams of white chocolate. So what I'm going to do first is break all of my milk chocolate up into small pieces and add it into a bowl and then microwave it for 15 seconds at a time, stirring in between each burst until it's fully melted. Once it is melted, I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of a neutral oil. So today I've got sunflower oil, but you could use vegetable oil, canola oil, avocado oil, anything like that that hasn't got a strong flavor or smell. I'm just going to stir that in because what that does is prevents our chocolate topping from setting too hard, which then can lead to cracking, as we want gorgeous aesthetic slices for these Millionaire Shortbreads, and that is how we're going to achieve that. And that's a good little baking hack for you, especially in winter if you're making these. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the white chocolate, microwaving until it's fully melted. And I'm just going to add in about 1/4 of a teaspoon of oil for this one because we have much less chocolate. So now that we've got all our melted chocolate, it's time to start decorating. We are going to firstly pour our milk chocolate onto our caramel layer. Just spread it out with a spoon until it's nice and flat and smooth. Once we've got that on there, we're going to take a teaspoon and start adding little tiny dollops of the white chocolate all across the milk chocolate. And then with either a cocktail stick or a skewer, we're going to basically start swirling that through in like circular motions until we get a gorgeous marble pattern. This is optional. You don't have to do the white chocolate, but I just love how the pattern looks. It zhuzhes it up a bit and just makes it look a bit more fancy. Once that's on there, we're going to add that either to the fridge or the freezer. I'm going to be doing the freezer today for a couple of hours. You can add it to the fridge for about 6 to 8 hours or the freezer for about 2 to 3, just until all the layers are completely set. And then using a sharp knife, we're going to slice that up into about 9 evenly sized squares, and then the bake is ready to enjoy. I forgot to say earlier, we actually cut them into 12 slices, not 9. That is how to make a delicious classic Millionaire Shortbread. These are absolutely beautiful. They smell incredible. Those layers are perfect. We've got like a similar amount of caramel to shortbread and that chocolate topping. These are perfect all year round. They're actually surprisingly easy to make. They're just an absolute crowd pleaser. Everybody loves a Millionaire Shortbread. You guys have to give these a try as soon as you can. On that note, I hope you enjoyed coming along with me to make these today. If you did enjoy the video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments if you have any other baking suggestions for me, as I would love to hear what you guys would like me to make. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next week for a new video.